Okay, so here we are on day two, and we're right back where we started yesterday. We've got our home screen there with this pop-up alert sitting in the foreground. So this is what we're going to start off with today: is how do we get these alerts to pop up in the foreground? But with Govstack, there's actually two different types we can pull in. This is one type, and it's a pop-up, and it's meant to be in your face as soon as you get there. But it also prevents you from actually engaging with the website until you've acknowledged it and gotten rid of it. So I can scroll through the background, but I can't actually touch anything. So I have to acknowledge this pop-up that's sitting in the foreground. And as I mentioned yesterday, that if there were multiple of these, they would have little arrows on the side, allowing us to then scroll through. Each one can be dismissed individually by clicking on the X in the upper right-hand corner of each one of them, or I could dismiss all of them collectively by clicking on the Dismiss All Alerts button, that blue button up in the upper right-hand corner of the entire page here. So once we've dismissed these, it livens the color of the site up. I can engage and click on things, and off we go. But it kind of ensures that people have seen the message you need to put out there. And they can be for absolutely anything you need them to know before they dive into whatever they came here for. So we're working with those. Now there's a second type that's called a banner. And a banner one sits at the very top above your header, but it comes full color. All the pop-ups now come only in one color, and that is white. And what we can impact is that there's a little icon at the top of it that we can impact the color of, but it's not overwhelming in color, not the way that I create where the blues, the grays, the greens, they kind of were like little washes of watercolor over it. They were kind of informational, but the red one was livid red. Well, the pop-ups, even the red ones, are just a red icon at the top there. They're not really eye-catching, and not that people won't get information from them, because obviously they have to acknowledge that they've seen it, at least, in order to be able to move into the site. But the banners that we have up at the top are full color, and so they will display it and draw the eye up to those things. So depending upon how you want to get your information across in here, can be dictated by the two different types of alerts that you can pick. Now, news stories are news stories. Now, with iCreate, whenever you created an alert banner, it also created a corresponding news story. Well, that doesn't happen anymore. The two are completely separate functions. It doesn't mean that you can't create an alert banner or an alert pop-up with information that might be referring to a story, but you have to create the story separate from it now, okay? Now, in here, we have where the news stories go. We have a section down here called What's Happening, and it's got a news feed. And this news feed functions almost identically to how the news feed functioned with iCreate on your homepage and things like that. But there are a couple of differences between them, including how we configure the feed and things like that. So that's what's sitting here in the foreground. And of course, we've got a couple of stories in here as well. Now, we do have this view all news, because obviously we can't have all the news stories on the front page at the same time. Think of it literally like a newspaper. The most important things that are going on are going to make it to the front page. And it's not that there isn't news that isn't front page worthy, but those kind of sit in the heart of the newspaper. Well, we can go to the heart of the newspaper by clicking on View All News. That takes us to a dedicated news page. All the news stories, regardless of what categories they're attached to, they all end up here as an archive. So you can save it page over page, and people can go back in time and read up on stories that they might have missed or wanted to reference as the topic comes up again later. And as I showed you during our tour, we have a comprehensive search function that goes with it, where we can work with keywords, we can work with categories and date ranges within here. And we also have that subscription module. So whether we're doing it from the home page or whether we're doing it from here, these target the news news stories. Now, if I click on the subscribe and head to that, it allows me to pick categories that I want to work with. And we only have the general category right now. Okay, so the general category is the only thing we have. Now, one of the things with iCreate is that we asked you for the categories that you wanted, and any categories beyond that, unless you really were able to delve into the workings of this, you kind of had to ask us to go and insert them for you. So if you needed a category about COVID, as that started up, that is something that you would have had to have us insert for you. Well, that's all in your hands now. So on the fly, on any given day, if you need a new category, you can create them and add them in here, and they get added to all these bits and pieces automatically. So your subscription module, as you add new categories, will add them to the list here, as well as if I was on the actual news page, it'll add automatically to the categories that are available here. Okay, so we'll take a look at how we build a news story. So we're going to start with the news stories in here. So this is where they show up. Well, I need to go to the inside because really I'm just sitting on the outside as if I was a member of the public. How do I actually get in there and work with these things? Well, I need to go in to the back office of Govstack, and of course I don't enter through the same door you do. So I'm going to take my my little special door and head into there, and I'm going to log in. Yep. Of course, I'm going to end up on that welcome page. You can see in here, I'm now dominating all the recent activity because I've really been, the only one in the last day to be in here. And of course, my recent activity shows up here. I've got pending content now. And if I click on this, it will say, hey, this is a sub-page listing. So that means that I published it once, then I made a change and saved it, but I didn't publish it a second time. So all these will be listed here, but you can see who was the one that saved it, but didn't publish it. So it always allows you to be able to go in and find out who the person is, so you could follow up with them if you need to, if that's your responsibility to say, hey, you've got some pending content pages here, what's up with those? So you can always tell who's who's working with those. Well, we're going to head over to here now, and what I'm going to do is, before I get into the actual inner workings of the news alerts, I'm going to go to our home page. So this is how we built our home page, and of course the components that we have here, there's that what's happening section, which corresponds with, and I'll just go back out here and grab a hold of your page there, but that corresponds with the what's happening section that we have here. So everything that's contained and displayed in this section is governed with this component. And you can see it's just a pod, meaning that we'll make sure it balances all properly outside there. So when I head to the inside, it has the intro set up to say, well, what's happening? Well, that's the title at the top here that they're using as the intro. And then when we get down to the actual content, it's a news feed and an embed code. And so, Randy, when you're asking about how can we get things to be here, embed code is a type of an element that we can have. And if I just go to add content here and we look at embed code, it gives me a heading, secondary heading, but then it asks for embedding code. That's done for the script version. So if your ebooks are run with a JavaScript, some kind of HTML code, we can insert it through the embed code component. That's one possibility. Okay. There we go. So what we're working with here, we're not worrying with the embed code because that's running the display of your Facebook page here. What we want to look at is the actual news feed. And if I go into the news feed, what it's saying here is categories. So this is the same as that when you open the feed up on your homepage for your iFeed. So it's asking, well, what categories do you want to allow out here? So we're able to govern which categories can get pushed to the front page. So right now, because you only have the category called general, that's what we've got in here. So anything that's attached to that general gets pushed in, can be pushed out to the homepage. And it says you can have a maximum of 3 at a time being displayed. And all it's saying is at the very top, there's a heading that says news. So that's what's being displayed up here. And then it says, hey, we've got a link to, and it's going to say view all news. It's going to take us to that specialty news page. So this is all configured for you. The only thing you would ever need to do is if you create your own categories and you want them to come to the homepage, once you created the categories, you would need to come into this feed and then just hit add. And this will show me all the categories that are available. And I can pick and choose which categories are able to be pushed to the front page. So that's all there is to running the feed. It just is going to do what it's going to do. Building these pieces has nothing to do with the regular pages. We have those unique pieces of alerts and news through here, but you'll notice on the news segment, there's a black arrow saying, hey, there's other stuff that goes. It's not just one singular piece anymore. There's some other pieces. So when I expand, don't worry about the RSS one here, but we're able to govern our own categories. We're able to create authors, and when we put those pieces out there, it'll say by, and so you can create your own list of authors. So if there's people other than the city of Aurelia or anything like that are contributing to this, you can create your own authors segments to give a little shout out to them, and then the posts themselves, and let's build our story. So they're all housed within here. But even then, you'll see categories has a little black arrow, and if I expand that, there's that general piece. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to look at the three pieces of the news here, and I'm going to show you how we can work and maintain those ourselves without having to call support or anything like that. Well, the first is categories, and like I said, it was very hard for the end user to create categories with iCreate. Well, it's wide open now. Now, one of the things that I told you yesterday is that when we work with different segments here, once you kind of understand the basics of how things are created and added, it's just rinse and repeat from there on. Well, the same thing happens here. If I want to add a category, it's the exact same as me building a page. My pages are all found under recreation because I went to recreation the first time and said, let's add a child page to that, where I made the text mark. And then once I had text mark, I said, well, all the other pages are going to be the children of text mark. So I would always go to text mark and say, let's add to that layer. Well, that functions the same way when it comes to the news and the categories. So in the categories here, that's the parent. If I want to add another one of these categories here so that I can expand my list, well, I'm doing it the same way. I'm going to go to categories up here. Discard them. I'm going to go to categories up here, and then I'm going to right click and go to create. And under there, it's got a unique template. So with the news, it knows that with the categories and the news posts, these are unique templates that we've already built for you. So this is just a news category page. And if I go in there, it says, do you want a blank one or the standard one? Well, don't pick the blank one, pick the standard one because it's all pre-configured. So when I click on this, the configuration of how this heading is going to be displayed and stuff like that, it's already created as part of the template. All you have to do is change the name at the top. So just with pages, it picks the name of the template by default. So of course, I don't want to call my category that. So what do I want to have a category on? Well, so I can find it or remove it later on. We're going to create a category called Mark Training. And this is all there is to it. You come to the categories, you right click, you hit create. And from that list, you pick the standard one news category page. And up here, I simply change this to say Mark Training. And I hit save and publish. And that's it. So once I've saved and published this particular category, it gets added to my category list. Okay, so now I create my own categories. And if I go back out here and I refresh, if I go to my view all news page and I look at my news categories, it automatically adds Mark Training into there. Okay, if I go to my subscription module, it already adds Mark Training into there. It's all taken care of for you. You just build them, and all that is saying create. You change the name at the top, save and publish, done. Build these on the fly as you need to along the way. But of course, it doesn't mean that it's going to show up on the home page. It's going to show up on the aggregate news page automatically. But showing up on the home page is something different. So now that I've saved and published this, I would go to my home page, and from my what's happening, go down to my news feed, and in there I go to categories, and when I hit add now, it's got both of them. So I said, well, let's add Mark Training to that list as well. Well, now Mark Training is allowed to be pushed to the front page as well. So I hit submit, and even with the home page, if I'm making changes to it, I've got to save and publish it. So now I've changed the news feed to accept my Mark Training. Okay. So it can be pushed to the front page, but that's all there is to creating a category. You just right click on categories here, you change the name at the top, you save and publish. And if you want it to go to the home page, you go to the home page and change that what's happening news feed segment. That's it. Any questions about creating or adding categories? All right. Well, then we work with authors. So if I go into authors, you notice there's no little black arrow. It just is what it is. So when I click on authors, it says, hey, there's that City of Aurelia recreation that's going to be attached by default to every news story that we add. So this is done and will be added as the author automatically. So that's pre-done. But I can create my own. If the City of Aurelia Recreation is not who's creating this story, not contributing to this, doesn't mean I can't give a shout out to them. And it's very simple. I simply click on create a news author. And in here it says give it a name. Well, we'll create a fake news author whose name is Test Festerson. Okay, Test Festerson. Now, simplify the areas that we can work with, the content and advanced. And all advanced is disabling the delete. So it's just this content page. Well, it says, let's give them a bio. Now, this doesn't work quite yet. What the intention is that when we have this, if you were to click on the actual name, right now it just reloads or relinks to the page. But in the future, we want it to be able to open a bio page. So that will be part of a rollout in the future as well. And what this will do is allow us to write a bio. And you can say, you know, an award-winning news author who contributed any stories, whatever you want to put there. Okay, just give them a bio. Okay, now in there we could put an image, so we could go in here and say, okay, well, we're going to do do 1 by 1 square of the for the author. Box padding, we already understand what that is, and there's the author's image. So we can reach out here and we'll make Milo, of course, test him. Now, if Milo has a page in your website or a website or web page to themselves somewhere, we can link into an author page. So when you go to that bio, you'll be able to click and go see, a page that's dedicated to them. And when I click add in here and I add a link, it's the same page that we were building links with yesterday. So always the same input that we have. Same with social links. If there's a Twitter feed or a Facebook page or an Instagram account that we want associated with Test McTesterson, we can put it in the social links here. And once we built all these pieces of the author's bio, we simply save and publish. And now we've got another author out there. So if I take a step backwards here, now I've got 2 authors. Now, Test McTesterson is not added to your news stories by default. That's always going to be the City of Aurelia Recreation. But we can remove that and change it to another author, or maybe it's several people that contributed, in which case you can just add on and build whatever system of acknowledgement you want. Any questions about building an author? All right, the final piece is creating the posts. So when I go to the posts here, it says, hey, there's those 2 news stories that we see on the homepage currently. So to create this, it's just like creating an author. I'm just going to click on the one that says create a news post. But what it does, it says, okay, well, what style of story you want? So there's a blank one, which of course we don't use because it's not templated. But it's saying, do you want to use one with a banner or no banner? Okay, and this is the same decision we make on any given page. Do we want a picture at the top or not? Well, sure, let's take that. So when I bring it over, by default, it's going to give it the name of news post banner. So what we're going to do is we're going to change this to say that this is test news story 1. Okay. Now, across here we have, if you notice, all the same things we would have on any given page. The only thing that is been added to this is a piece called settings. The settings have to be set for a news story. Okay, there is no overriding settings for regular pages. We can use the settings on the individual components, but there's nothing for the whole page. Well, news stories are unique and they have their settings right here. So what the settings are asking is a post date. Now, when we take a look at the news here, there is a date that's attached, and that's what's going to be determined by this post date. But it also serves a second purpose. The post date is what gets stamped there, so we know what date this happened on. But that's but it also dictates where this sits on the news page and in the news feed. The newest releases will always be projected at the top. But the date that's attached to that release, so we know where to put it, is based on this post date. So when I make a posting date, if I made 3 news posts today, I might set one for 9 a.m., one for 10 a.m., and one for 11 a.m. Now, this is not publishing. Publishing is still its own unique piece in the bottom right corner. This is dictating the order in which will be displayed. The one at 11 o'clock will be the most recent of the posts and will be the one that's at the top of the list, followed by the 10 o'clock below it and the 9 o'clock below that, and then whatever was older on there beyond that. Remember, we can only have 3 on the homepage. So as we add these new pieces on there based on post date, it's going to shuffle the older ones off. Now, we're not losing them. They're just going to go live on that news page we archive there. So the post date dictates what will be stamped on the actual news story, as well as determines the order in which they're displayed. Okay, so if I'm creating my news story today and I click in here, I will say, yeah, it's the 18th. And at what time? Well, let's retro this back to 9 a.m. So that's what's going to dictate where that is stamped. So if I build a bunch of stories today, it's based upon whatever time within the same date will determine the order. Okay. Now, the next we have is post categories. Which categories do I want to attach to this? Well, when I hit add, it will only show me things that are categories. So I can pick, and I can pick more than one. I can say it's general and mark training. As long as one of your categories is allowed to be pushed to the front page, it'll show up there. Now, different than what we had with iCreate is we don't have that little piece that says featured. So back with iCreate, we used to be able to target and say, this is worthy of making it to the front page, this one's not. And we just check that little feature box. We don't have that here. It's simply done upon the post date. Okay, if it's allowed to move to the home page, it will. And it will be stacked in whatever order based upon the posting dates that we put there. So everything goes to the home page. Now, there is a workaround. I shouldn't call it a workaround. The way that you use this to determine what would make it to the home page and what wouldn't is to create a singular category. It might be called featured article or featured news. And what it would be is I would make that the only feed that will be allowed, or sorry, the only category allowed by the feed. And when I come in and build a news story, if it's worthy of making it to the homepage, I add it as one of my categories. Anything that I just want to go straight to the news page, I can assign with any other category, as long as they don't attach the featured news to it. Okay. Otherwise, everything, as long as the feed is allowed, will make it to the homepage. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, so once I've got my categories attached, then it says author, and you can see it by default, because it's a template, pulls in the city of Aurelia. Now I can say that, well, but it was also contributed by Tess McTesserson. I can hit add, and it will only show me the authors that have been built. So I can go in and say, well, we'll add Tess McTesserson as well. Well, now both are attached to it. And of course, if I only wanted to be Tess McTesserson, I could remove the city of Aurelia. I could always go back and add it in by, need to after, but we can control the author that's stamping it. Well, the next thing we have is this disable comments. So the system actually has the ability to treat this as if it's a blog to allow people to like or dislike or to add comments to it. But it does require an additional piece that takes care of that called Discus. And Discus, it requires a licensing key with a username, stuff like that. So we don't have that. So by default, the comments are disabled. They're just news stories. We're not asking people just to submit a response to them or anything like that. And then we have send the subscriber notification. Now, this is the same as we're used to working with iCreate. Back then, when we went to hit the publish button, it would bring up the publishing box and it would allow you to check that little box saying, yeah, send out a notification to our subscribers. Well, the same works on the same principle. By default, it's turned on. You're creating a news story, you needed to send it out to your subscribers, and you can create a customized message to send out. Now, anytime you are creating a new news story or even doing an update to a news story, you need to check or to send this out. That's the entire purpose of why people subscribe to something, so they get notified, so they don't have to manually come here all the time. So this is slid on or toggled on automatically as part of the template. So when you create a new story or you're updating the content with new facts and things like that, always leave this on and always send out a customized message. Every time you publish it, it's going to send out another notification to the people that you subscribe. Now, why not just have it hardwired so you can't turn it off? Well, not everything requires you to send out a notification. What ends up happening is when people click on the link for this, it shows whatever the most recently published version of the story is. So if I gone through and I've sent this out and I save and publish, and then I look at it again, I'm like, oh, I misspelled this all the way through it. Now I got to fix it. Oh, after I fix it, I have to save and publish it. And it technically wants to send out another subscriber notification. So if I don't change anything, I can write and say, oh, it's a spelling mistake or whatever I wanted, it sends out another notification. But whether they click on the first notification or the second notification, whatever the most recent published version, which of course has the spelling errors corrected, is what they're going to see. So it's redundant. It's going to take them to the same view. So if you're making a correction that's not actually changing the facts or the content of it, you can slide and turn this off so that no notifications are sent. But if it is content, new content, or the change of content, then yes, they need to be notified. Okay. All right. So I'm going to turn mine off because it's not going to set, we don't have any subscribers, but anyways, I'll turn it off. Well, then we get into the rest of these pieces, and it's no different than what we're used to with regular web pages. If I then move on to content, well, it says, okay, well, we're going to lay it out with all the information. Well, that's the same as any interior page. Do I want to put a page title on here? Sure. Well, what might I be having here? Well, I'm going to create a fictional thing called a bacon festival. And so we're going to celebrate this bacon festival that's going to come up. Now, when we work with news stories, if we write overtly what the story is about, some people say, oh, I went to the bacon festival last year. There's no sense in me reading this. So sometimes we can have a little bit more flair with this. So I might, as a page title for this, say, instead of saying bacon festival, I might say meat extravaganza to come to Aurelia. Okay, so we get people's attention with that. Now that's going to generate it as a heading level 1 on my page. And then down here, we already have content pieces. But again, just like with any page, I don't have to keep them. It's just a template. If I don't want a banner, I could remove the banner by using the trash can. If I don't want to use a text box, not sure how I'm going to get the story across, but I can get rid of that. And I can add any of the types of components that we've been working with. Okay, so all kinds of different ways. It just puts a text and a banner in here. But it's kind of like the way news stories were in iCreate. iCreate said, here's a featured picture, and then here's the text area where you can put that in. Well, it's no different here. I can go to the banners and to the banner here, and I can add an image in here. And of course, if it's a video, I could put it in there. So if we have, video footage that will be part of that news story, we can do that. Well, I guess if we click on this and say, let's pick our gorilla here as being the focus of this. Now, just like with the banners we saw out there, it does allow you to put a heading, a secondary heading and text, but this will be actually written on the banner, making it very difficult to see. So I do caution that use your banners just as the image that you want to be shown here. Don't worry about writing anything else because you do have a text box already here to accommodate for that. So I'm just going to bring in our picture of the gorilla, and that's going to be our picture that goes with it. Well, then I can go down to text here, and it's just a text box, right? Now I can use this in any way that I want. I'm just going to go over to my superheroes here. And get that ready to go. And I'll just say that this is going to be our story anyways, and copy. So when I go back to here, it's the same thing, right? I can write my story right here, all about my bacon festival. And of course, because I'm copying and pasting, I'll scrub it up. There we go. There we go. So now I got a story. But of course, it's still just titled Meat Extravaganza to Come to Aurelia. I might want to quantify that. So I can always use my intro here and go in and align it to the left and put another heading in here and say, bacon festival coming to town. All right, so that's going to be our inside one. That'll be an H2. Okay. And then down here, the story might be about the gorilla. And so what I might do in here is I could go in and grab myself a new space and say that, but there's a bacon fiend on the loose. So bacon fiend is a creature that shows up at bacon festivals and gobbles up all the bacon and scares the patrons off. So we're writing a story about that. But of course, this is sort of quantifying what we're looking at here. So I've already got my H1 saying it's a meat extravaganza, and I've got my bacon festival here as my H2. So this would be an H3. So I can go to my formats and add it in as an H3. Okay. And I can hit submit. Well, what does this look like now? Well, I can hit save. I can save and preview this. And it's really no different than any other page. I've got my H1 at the top. If there's a meat extravaganza to come to Aurelia, I've got my banner picture of the bacon fiend, and bacon festival's coming to town is my H2. Bacon fiend on the loose, and there we go. Okay, that makes sense. All there is. It's just building a page once you get to the inside. The only thing I had to do was set the settings because that was a unique piece. Well, now it's good to go. Well, if I want to use this, I can save and publish this. Okay. Well, now if I go out to the home page, well, it says news post. Well, why does it say news post? It doesn't say meat extravaganza to come to Aurelia. One of the things I haven't shown you is I've only worked with the content here. Okay. If I go over to the summary, that's where it says news post. That's where it's pulling that in from. So the summary is something you have to fill out on all of your news stories. So this is where I would go back to my content and I would copy my meat extravaganza and go to the summary. Instead of having it display as news post, I want to display as the meat extravaganza is coming to Aurelia. Okay. Now I can even go in here and I can put a picture of something else. So let's take, let's put Milo in there. There we go. What I'm going to do is I am going to save and publish it now. Actually, before I do that, let's go into the text here and just write additional text in there. And we'll see where this pops up, okay? So I'm going to say, so on the summary, I gave the heading that I had on the front page. I could add some text if I wanted, and I put an image. But once I save and publish my news story, if I go back to the home page and refresh, it now pulls in that it's the meat extravaganza that's coming to Aurelia. I've got my updated author bio, I got my date stamp, and the categories I'm attached to. That's all there is to getting it to come out to the home page. Now, I can click on it and go into the story, or I can click on View All News. Now, when I view all news, it'll take me over here, and you can see it's added it in, but it's still pulling from the summary. That's what I put in the summary. There's that additional text that I put in the summary, and there's the picture of Milo. That's not the picture of the bacon feed. That's on the inside of our news story. It puts whatever I have on the summary page out here. This is just like when we created the related content pieces or the sub-page listing. It's simply pulling in from there and saying, this is how we're going to display things on our news page. Now with that, I can go in and click on it, and it will take me into the actual news story, which displays just like a regular page. The only difference is over here, instead of having the sub-navigational menu, it's talking about all the posts, and I can pick it by category it's available. Okay, so there we go. That's all there is to it. Now, when it comes to working with these as well, let's go over here, back to the View All News. In here, if I want to use my search criteria, I can do it by keyword. So if I want to type in bacon and go find those kind of things, by category, okay, or by date range. But I can actually engage with those things over here. If I say, gee, I really like the marked training pieces here, let's take a look at those. I can filter by it over here, but if I just simply click on it from here, it'll actually do the filter for me and simplify it there. Okay. So lots of different ways that we can get it to engage with there. But just be aware that what is written out here on the home pages of the display comes from the summary. And when I go to the View All News page, it too is generated by what's in the summary. The only time it's showing what's literally in the news story you built is when you go into the news story. Now, if you needed to edit that, there's different ways you can do that. You can go back over here, go back into our posts, and you see there's that test news story. If I click out here, it simply says, what do you want to do with it? Like if I wanted to delete it or unpublish it, to get into or do the edit, I'm clicking right on the name. That pops me down to here, and it says, okay, well, what do you want to do here? Well, I want to go back and edit the content. Now I can go back into my text box and I can add in an update, okay? Or I could use the outro, and in here I could then go and say, you know, bacon feed is behind bars. They catch it and take it away. Make it another H2 because it's another segment here. And I might write the story, the change in story about the apprehension of the bacon fiend down here. Okay, so now I've updated this. Well, now I would go back, or when I submit this, it changes what my text box does. Well, now I would go to settings and I would go in here, and because I'm creating a new news story, I would change the posting date to now say, well, let's make this 9:30. Okay. Now, nothing else is changing in here. It's still going to be attached to all the same things. I'm just going to save and publish, and I've updated my news story. Now, when I go back out here and I refresh, it's not adding a new piece to my list. It's still the same piece. It's just been updated. But what ends up happening now, if I go into the actual news story, I've used that outro to create a follow-up piece here that goes with it. Okay. Does creating a news story make sense to everyone? Okay, so that's news stories. Well, we can also work with alerts. Now, as I said, alerts do not create news stories. So we're going to create some alerts that reflect the Bacon Festival or the Bacon Feed. Now, because I wrote a story about it, I can relate those pieces to the news stories that I've written, but I do have to create it separately. So when I work with alerts, I'm using the other piece here, and you notice it does not have a dropdown. There's no extra pieces to alerts. They just are. So when I go to alerts, there's that welcome to our new website, but it looks just like we were creating news stories or author bios. We're just going to create an alerts item. In there are three areas: the content, the settings, and advanced, and all that is disabling the delete on it. So at the top, I'm going to give it a name. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a test alert pop-up. So we're going to do the pop-up the first time, okay? So with this test alert pop-up, I start with content. It says, well, what do you want your title to say? So I'm going to say in here that maybe, say there's a meat extravaganza. Aurelia. So we'll use the same term that we had before. Now down in the optional label, I'm just going to write optional in there. And then the description, what do I want to say about it? Well, I'm just going to grab like a singular, this little tiny segment right there, okay? And that's what we're going to write about it. Now you notice in here is simplified. There's a lot of things I can't do in here, including scrub it. Alerts are meant to be as succinct and as direct as possible. We don't want to write them a novel. That's what web pages are for. What we want to do is get the idea across here. So it's assuming you're going to keep this out, okay? Well, at the very bottom, it says call to action text. You know, call to actions are like what we have on the home page with these. These are call to action. So what it wants us to do is when you read this alert, do you want them to be able to go somewhere and get more information? Well, I have a whole news story on the Bacon Festival that's coming, this meat extravaganza. So what I can do is I could go into here and I could say, like, learn more about the Bacon Festival. As well, that says, well, okay, well, if you click on this link, where do you want it to go? And when I hit add, it opens the usual piece. I could send this off to a different website, a different a PDF, anything I have about this. But in this case, I'm sending it to a news story. So to send this to the Bacon Festival news story, I can go to drop down for recreation, go under the news, and under the posts that I have for the news, and there's my stories. And I can say, well, I'll take it to test news story number 1. So that's going to be a destination if you click on the button that says learn more about the Bacon Festival. So that's the content. At the top, I gave it a title. I've had an optional piece here. I'll show you where that is. The actual the alert, and then a button to go get more information. Well, that's all there is to the content. When I go to settings, it says the alert type. Is this a pop-up or a banner style? Well, because I created the buttons on the first page, my intention is for it to be a pop-up. So I click on pop-up. Whoop, I can grab it there. All right. Then it says alert style. Now this is the color, and you get the 4 colors, blue, green, orange, and red, depending upon what the nature is. Well, this isn't a warning, really. I mean, it is, but it's not what we want to use here. It's more informational about the Bacon Festival. So we'll just do it as info blue. Then it asks for a start date. Once again, this is going to be stamped on here, but it's when really do you want the alert to start showing up? We can trigger it and say, don't start showing this alert till Friday or something like that. But if I go into here, I can pick today's date and retro it back to 9 a.m. and we'll have it out there. And then there's an alert end date. So if I want this alert to come down at a specific time, I could do so. But not every alert's going to have that. When there are things that have variables, like a burn ban or a water advisory, we're not quite sure when they're going to come off. So we might leave it open-ended, which is why it's not a required field. But if it's talking about the Bacon Festival, this doesn't need to be out here after the Bacon Festival is over. So I could attach an alert end date to this as well. Say, don't bother to show it after this period of time. So I'm not going to add it in here, but that's what I would do. Now, a new feature that we have is alert pages. Back with iCreate, if you had an alert, it would show up on whatever page you first arrive on. If you showed up on the home page, that's where it would display. If you show up on a bookmarked animal control page, that's where that you would see it. Wherever you first showed up. Now, this functions the same way. If I have something bookmarked, it's the first place I show up on, I'll be able to see it. Okay. But the difference here is that I can actually target pages now. I might say my alert about the Bacon Festival really should only pop up if you go to my text mark page. Okay. Well, I can simply come to alert pages, hit add, and reach into my hierarchy and pick and say, I only want to show up if you go to the text mark page. So the thing is that it will not show up on any other page unless you go to text mark and then it shows it. And of course, you can't engage with the text mark page until you acknowledge that you've read it. Now, I'm not going to actually attach this to anything, okay? But you can not only pick one page, but you can pick multiple pages. So you can say, if you come to any of these first, these are the pages you can do that. So this is new. Advanced is simply disabling the delete. So all I did was fill out the title I want. There's a little optional piece, the actual alert, and I created a button to go off to someplace to get more info. Under the settings, I picked the style, which is a pop-up, the color of the icon I wanted, which is blue, and when I want it to show up. Well, now I can save and publish. Now, one of the things about this is that when I sit out here, I can't actually see it when I go out because I've already dismissed the alerts. I've already got that cookie generated saying I already read the alerts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this in a different browser window that doesn't have that cookie. So I'm going to go over here and paste it in, and we can head over there. And you can see there's the meat extravaganza coming to Aurelia with the little optional box underneath of it. It's got the blue icon at the top. I've got my story or my little piece here, and I can learn more about the Bacon Festival. If I click on this, it'll open up and take me over to the Bacon Festival, and I can get the information. Okay. And there's my Bacon Festival piece. So that's how it works when you work with a pop-up. It's going to be here. Now we have more than one pop-up in here. So I can use the arrow here to go read about the welcome to the website. So you can navigate around and read these, and I can dismiss them independently, or I can dismiss them all at once using the dismiss all alerts. But that is how you create a pop-up, a pop-up alert. Are there any questions about creating a pop-up alert and how, even though it doesn't create its own story, I can create a link to that story for people to find out more information? Everybody good with that? Okay, let's take a look at the other style then, the banner style. So if I went up here, we went back there, there's that test alert pop-up. Well, we're going to create a new one here, and we're going to call it a test alert banner. Okay, now nothing is different. Okay, the alert title, and I can say this is a warning. Okay, and then an optional label. The description here, I might just say, bacon being on the loose. Now, of course, I can't, because I'm not going to do as a pop-up, I can't use the links here. Now, I could create a hyperlink on the inside here to create my own learn more. Okay, but my suggestion is use the banners that pop up. Use a pop-up if you want to talk to have people go more information. These banners should be more to the point. Okay, so warnings and things like that that people need to know, because one of the things that the banners do is they follow you, and I'll show you that in a minute. So I put the description as a bacon feed on the loose. I go to my settings. I pick the alert type as a banner style this time, and I'll pick it as a warning in orange. My alert date, we'll do it today. We'll retro it back to 9 a.m. And there we go. I'm not going to put an end date, and I'm not going to target pages. So the only thing I did different here is I didn't bother to fill in the call to action text and link because I'm not going to use a pop-up style. I made sure I picked the banner and I picked the color as something different. When I save and publish, I now have that alert. Now, if I go back here and paste in your URL again, I still have these pieces here, and if I dismiss them, my alert is still here at the top. So banners sit here at the top. Warning, bacon feed on loose, full color draws your eye towards it. Okay. Now, if I go to a different page, like aquatics, it follows me along. It's going to follow along until I click on the X to dismiss it. So if you have more than one of these banner style, it just stacks them up down here, and they will take up space until you dismiss them. But they will follow you page to page no matter where you go until you get rid of them. With the pop-ups, you have to dismiss it before you can actually travel somewhere else. Just creating a banner style makes sense. Okay, that's all there is to alerts. So I've shown you how we can build news stories, so we can customize our own categories and follow that add to the different parts that we have. I've shown you how we can create unique authors for it, and how we create news stories, and how we can use those categories we attach to determine whether it shows up on the home page, and so on. And then I showed you how to build alerts. There's two different types. The pop-up that sit in the foreground, they're always white with a colored logo on it, but we can use that button on there to say, hey, go find out more. And we can attach it to news stories or web pages or even outside of the site. And the other type is a banner style, and that's full color and it sits at the very top and follows you around and is meant to draw your eye towards it, but doesn't stop you from actually engaging with the site. Any questions about any of those? All right, let me stop the recorder there. So that'll house just our